Hey everyone, I just thought of something that I wanted to um, kind of link on to the last video that I did, which was about addressing some atheistic content that I watched, uh, which was a pretty long video. I think it was like an hour. Um, but this video will be pretty short. Um, and this is really, I mean, this is almost so simple that I don't think I need to make a video on it, but I think some Christians um, can be overwhelmed when an atheist or an unbeliever will say, like, talk about the Bible and say, well, when we talk about something like fulfilled prophecy or whatever it might be that comes out of the Bible, then they can just always resort to saying, well, the Bible is just a work of fiction. And so then they can always say, well, you can't use the Bible to argue for the Bible because that's a contradiction. Um, so you can see how that would run into problems in any meaningful discussion about apologetics, about the Bible, about proving what the Bible is, if you're not allowed to use the Bible at all. Um, and it runs into so many problems that I'm not going to get into here, but this video is just going to be really short. So in short, and simply put, the Bible is slandered by unbelievers, and we're not allowed as Christians to argue for the Bible using the Bible. And there are ways to argue for the existence of a personal God without using the Bible, but ultimately, like, if you're really looking for content on the character of God, looking into the Bible is the best place to look. So, you can say, like, hey, we can talk about these things, and we can discuss, like, evidence for God, or philosophize about God without using the Bible, if that's what you want to do. But ultimately, um, if we really want to discuss the validity of the Bible, we're going to have to use the Bible, right? It just doesn't make any sense that you wouldn't. So that's one of the arguments they used in that video, or that podcast about the Bible not not being a valid document to use in apologetics, which is ridiculous. You can't. It's just like in a war. How can you defend a territory if you're nowhere near that territory? Um, how can you defend? Uh, defend somebody when you're not even where they are? How can you defend your home when you're at work? Like, how can you defend the Bible without using the Bible? Like, it's just um, seems pretty straightforward to me. Um, and then the other part of it, that this is the second part that really gets into that gets atheists who say you can't use the Bible to argue for the Bible into trouble, because all of a sudden, as soon as they want to start arguing for God's moral flaws, or argue against the character of the Bible, or argue against things in the Bible, or criticize the Bible, they're allowed to use it on their terms whenever they want. So it kind of seems like there's a double standard going on there, where as Christians, we're not allowed to use the Bible to argue for the Bible. But, and I'm not saying all atheists do this, and even the atheists that do this aren't doing it like maliciously. It's just something that I think happens. So I'm not saying this to be mean at all. Um, but I do think, like, I want to be helpful to Christians and non Christians, like, and just produce fruitful discussions, right? But, anyways, like, that, yeah, so, like, in one breath they say, uh, okay, you can't use the Bible to argue against the Bible because you're using a work of fiction um, to, to prove itself. And then in the next breath they say, well, we can use the Bible to criticize your belief system. We can use the Bible to make fun of it, to, diss on God's character. So, anyways, that's pretty much all I wanted to say for this short video. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of reasons why as Christians we do need to, if we're talking about Jesus as the Son of God, we have to use the Bible. Well, I guess you don't have to. Like you can maybe get creative and philosophize your way to Jesus, but the most effective way is to like look at the scriptures, and that's going to take some knowledge, right, of what the scriptures are and what their composition was, um, and probably some basic apologetics on like what whether the Bible is a trustworthy document. So having some knowledge in that is also important. But yeah, there definitely is like a double standard that's going on there, and so that was, I think, pretty much in my last video, and with this addition to it, I've addressed most of the arguments that they presented in their podcast about apologetics. So, like I said, I looked through all the content of all of their podcasts, and some of it was funny, some of it made me laugh. But I looked through most of the content, and I wanted to find. I'm sure I didn't look through all of it because they've probably been doing this for years, but I tried to find the one that looked to me like it was going to address, have the best arguments for atheism and be able to combat ideas of Christianity the most directly, instead of kind of talking about partisan issues or more political issues or direct quarrels with the church. This one was addressing the arguments for Christianity and apologetics. So I went there, and I think that I've addressed most of their issues with what their argumentation was. And I did it all through, recollection and recalling what they were saying. So I wasn't saying any direct quotes, but they had, it seemed like in their podcasts they were very prepared. They had studied who all the people were. They had studied these arguments. They, had even dug up dirt on some of the apologists' personal lives and stuff. And so they had done their homework, and I did my video, which was about an hour long, just right off the bat without finding a bunch of arguments to talk about it. And so I think that just shows like as Christians we can be prepared for addressing a lot of these arguments, and sometimes or a lot of these criticisms against our faith, and sometimes they're just they're the same ones that are used multiple times. But anyways, I hope this was helpful. But we can trust the Bible, guys. We are allowed to use the Bible, and if somebody that you're discussing with an atheist says like, hey, you can't use the Bible to argue for the Bible, I mean, I would say like, hey, I understand what you're saying, I understand where you're coming from, but like if you really want to try to like have a discussion about arguing for the existence of God or whatever it might be without using the Bible, I don't know, maybe you're down for that. But ultimately, I know that when we really get into discussion, you're going to be allowed to use the Bible to criticize it. So why can't I use the Bible to defend it? Anyways, hope that was helpful. So take care.